Good day, everyone. First, let me introduce myself. I'm Abelema from BSIS 1-1. For today's lesson, we're going to talk about Antarctica's continent. Under that is the physical geography of Antarctica with regards on its land, water, natural resources, and also the trade routes. So let's move on. Antarctica is also known as the coldest, windiest, driest continent among Earth's continent. It has a special wind known as katabatic, which arrange paired, large, flat expanses that makes a wind-dramatic combination. Antarctica is the fifth largest continent on Earth and also the highest continent with an average elevation of 2,500 meters, or in feet, it is 8,200. It is roughly the size of United States and Mexico in combination. So let's proceed on the water of Antarctica. Most of the fresh water sits in Antarctica's ice. 90% of these Earth melt by over 200 feet, which it has to do with the climate change, where if it is happen, the states, nations, or other places will be submerged in water, and the people existence will be definitely changed. The everyday living of people, the human lives, the animal lives will be also affected by this submerge. Most of the fresh water sits in Antarctica's ice, and also the Antarctica is known by its Antarctica's ice bridge that are actually floating fragments of the ice sheet of Atlantic glaciers which break off and drift out to the sea. So let's proceed on the mineral of the Antarctica. Geology of Antarctica is known sufficiently well to allow rather certain prediction of the existence of variety of mineral deposits. Scientific expeditions have found valuable minerals in some of Antarctic areas, including the following: antimony, chromium, copper, gold, lead, silver, molybdenum, tin, uranium, zinc, and many more undiscovered minerals beneath the ice of the Antarctica. Antarctica is divided into three regions, which are the East Antarctica, West Antarctica, and also the Antarctic Peninsula. Let's proceed in Antarctic Peninsula. It is probably Antarctica's most prominent geographical feature and is home to scientific station operated by the United States, United Kingdom, France, Australia, and other nations. As a matter of fact, Antarctica's earned reputation for being perfect for finding space routes. So, the scientific or researchers will be interested by those fallen rocks or minerals beneath those ice. Next is the West Antarctica. It is composed of islands, archipelagos, and small land masses, and the large part below the sea level. Next is, lastly, the East Antarctica, which known as the Greater Antarctica. It is accounts of two-thirds of Antarctic continent, and it composed of vast, icy deserts, wasteland that is almost covered with thick and permanent ice. And also, there are volcanoes beneath those thick ice, beneath Antarctica, which researchers found 138 volcanoes below Antarctica's ice. There are two active, which is the Mount Erebus and Deception Islands. And also, Antarctica is known by its transcentric mountain, which divides the continent into the Eastern Antarctica and Western regions. It is a series of mountains that is one of the longest in the Earth and extends up to 2,000 miles. Let's move on with the trade routes of Antarctica. Polar caps or subsiding creates admission to the new trade routes. Routes are viable shortcuts for global trade to the waterways, precautions to navigate unpredictable weather, the necessity for special trade ships, the need for operate slower velocities, reliable and partially for operating, and savings of time and fuel. Waterways are highly strategic and economically, politically, military, which is why the reason of United States Navy is updating its Arctic strategy, and also why China has drawn up a Polar Silk Road white paper. And lastly, why Russia solidified its control of and successfully monetized the route that traverses 3,000 nautical miles along its northern coastline. Here are some of the trade routes of the Antarctica. The Central Arctic Route, which is the shortest possible route connecting to the Pacific Atlantic Oceans, running from Ireland straight through the Arctic Circle over the North Pole to the Bering Strait. However, this route still constrained by thick ice caps. It is truly amazing that authentically there's a beauty on those ice beneath Antarctica's. There are too many mysteries and undiscovered features that our researchers internationally and locally searching for those answers. It is truly amazing that we had the Antarctica's continent that has to do with the balance of the heat on Earth and also in our weather. It is the reason why we feel warm, why we feel cold, because it balances the Earth's surface. As a human, we do have the responsibility in our environment. Let's always think the cause of everything and the effect of everything we used to be. We must always protect our planet. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Angela Katubig from BSIS 11 and I am here to talk about the human geography of Antarctica. As Antarctica is too isolated by distance, climate, and the storminess of its seas, that results in it having no permanent residents and no permanent human habitation except for research stations and field camps.
The stations are like small towns with everything the expeditioners need, like lighting, heating, and water. They have scientific laboratories, mechanical workshops, a doctor's clinic, food and equipment storage.
The population of people doing and supporting scientific research on the continent and its nearby islands varies from approximately 4,000 in summer to 1,000 in winter. About 1,000 personnel, including ship's crew and scientists doing onboard research, are present in the waters of the treaty region. In summer, the largest station in Antarctica, which is the McMurdo Station, has a population of about 1,000 people, while in winter it gathers about 200. There are at least 11 children born in Antarctica, and according to National Geographic in 2001, 8 children had been born at the Esperanza base alone. Emilio Marcos Palma, born on January 7, 1978, is an Argentine man known for being the first documented person to be born in Antarctica at the Esperanza base near the tip of the Antarctic Peninsula. Fishing off the coast and small-scale tourism are the known economic activities based outside Antarctica. People emigrate to Antarctica to study the climate, weather, geology, and wildlife, or for support such as radio operators, boatmen, mechanics, or electricians. During the summer, about 3,700 scientists work in the scientific research stations scattered across the continent.
The stations all have carpenters, renovating and fixing things, mostly inside over winter. There are electricians and plumbers to make sure there is fresh water and to look after the wastewater treatment. There are mechanics who keep the generator going for lights and heating, and who also look after the vehicles on station.
Researchers from a variety of scientific backgrounds study the Antarctic. Some researchers are geographers who map the surface of the world's coldest and most isolated continent, meteorologists who studies climate patterns including the ozone hole that hovers over the Antarctic, climatologists who checks the history of Earth's climate using ice cores from Antarctica's pristine ice sheet, marine biologists who studies the behavior of whales, seals, and squid, astronomers that make observations from Antarctica's interior because it offers the clearest view of space from Earth. Lastly, astrobiologists who study the possibility of life outside Earth's atmosphere, studies materials found in the Antarctic. As for how cultures work in Antarctica, any celebrations, festivals, traditions, or customs are relatively recent and tend to be specific to a particular country's basis rather than being very widespread.
Midwinter is traditionally celebrated with a swim. The people on station cut a hole in the ice for what is more of a quick dip in the water, which is around -2 degrees.
Good day to each and everyone. My name is Nasil from BSIS 1-1, and I'm responsible for the topic of Antarctic Treaty System of 1959. So, Antarctic Treaty System of 1959 was established December 1, 1959 on Washington, USA, and it was entered into a force on June 23, 1961. So, there are 12 signatories of this treaty, which is the Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Chile, French Republic, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, South Africa, USSR, United Kingdom, the Northern Ireland, and the USA. So this treaty is really significant for us because it promotes a long-term living and a sustainable world in which it is really necessary and up to now. So this treaty also ensure in all the interests of all mankind that Antarctica shall continue forever to be used exclusively for peaceful purposes and shall not become the scene or object of international discord. So it means that this treaty promotes only safetiness and the safeguard of the animals, the plants, and the whole continent. So it really prohibits nuclearization and a lot of unnecessary things that that cannot contribute on our modern living. So it also has been recognized as one of the most successful international agreements. So this treaty firmly committed to a system that is still effective in protecting their essential Antarctic interests. So its efficacy is really viable up to now because it promotes the protection of the mankind and the interest, like for animals and plants, which we all know some of the animals are now on extinction. So Antarctic Treaty System also compromises a number of related agreements and a lot of activities, like for example the scientific cooperation, the protection of Antarctic environment including our plants and animals. So it also promotes the preservation of historic sites, the management of tourism, information exchange, communication, and the safety of all the people. So I think that this treaty aims to have a lot of researches, a lot of investigation on how we can live on a world wherein we can foster safety and we can have a clean air every day. So now let us have here the 14 articles of the treaty. So it is really too long, but I will gonna explain it only in a nutshell. So now let us now proceed to the first one. It aims only about the peaceful purposes. As we all know that Antarctica, there are a lot of rich natural resources, so they want it to maintain only for peaceful continent. So they really prohibits military use, weapon testing, and about warfare. So they want to maintain the Antarctica as the world's demilitarized continent. So the next one will be the freedom of scientific investigation. They want the Antarctica to conduct a more scientific discoveries because there are things that undiscovered up to now. So they want to collaborate with other nations. They want to have a camaraderie to everyone, to have a continuous scientific research, because as we all know that learning is continuous. So they want to provide a lot of investigation through the whole continent. So the next one, the third one, which is the free exchange of scientific plans and data. So there are a lot of plans and data that can be found on the continent. So they want to have a data resulting project. They want to have conduct more expeditions. So they really tolerate it. The fourth one is the territorial claims on hold. So the Antarctic Treaty was established in 1959. So after it was applied into force in 1961, the 7 territorial claims that was mentioned, that will be mentioned after this, they really prohibit it, because no new claims can be made while the treaty is in force. So it means that they cannot own the whole continent. They cannot have an establishment. They cannot have a sovereignty on the whole continent, because Antarctica is not a nation for everyone. So the 7 territorial claims will still remain. Number 5 will be the nuclear activity. As we all know that nuclearization is really banned across the world, and we really support the disarmament of that. So nuclear activity like explosions, radioactive waste, it is really prohibited on that continent, because it is not for nuclear weapon testing. So they really banned it for a purpose. So the next one, number 6, will be the geographical coverage. So this treaty only applies to the ice shelves inland only on south at 60 degrees south latitude. So the next article will be about the 7th one, which is the inspection. So as we all know that Antarctica, there are a lot of undiscovered things or animals that can be found up to now. So they are really tolerating a lot of inspections about the facilities, about historical expeditions that has happened before. So this inspection is really helpful for everyone as we gain knowledge about it. So also inspections, they are one of the main goals of the research stations in Antarctica. The number 8 will be the jurisdiction. So this one is Antarctica is not a country, it is not a nation also. It is also only a continent that ensures about the preservation and how it can help the climate change, the sea level. So it is not for tourism, for enjoyment. So it is only conducted only for researchers. So they are prohibiting some of the tourists that they must only go to the Antarctica if they are having a keen observation. So if you also break the law that was mandated on the Antarctic Treaty, you will gonna have a sanction that you might receive when you go back to your nation. So for example, I will gonna go to Antarctica, and I will gonna do some wrongdoings there. So after I came back here in the Philippines, I will gonna find sanctions, because it is mandated on the article number 8, which is the jurisdiction. Number 9 will be the treaty meeting. So it is for the consultative and non-consultative parties. So they must attend the meetings to have a suggestions, to have any changes or reforms. So they must enhance this treaty up to 30 years. Number 10 will be the activities contrary to treaty. So these are the wrongdoings that it is really prohibited. So they are really banning like nuclearizations. So like they are catching extinct animals. So it is really contrary to the treaty. And number 11 will be the disputes of the treaty. So if there are some disputes that might happen, any disputes between parties should be resolved by a peaceful negotiation. But if not settled by agreement, it shall be determined by International Court of Justice or ICJ. So number 12 will be the modification and duration. So as what I've mentioned earlier, so this treaty is really effective for 30 years. So it shall remain forced for 30 years, and we must continuously support it, because it is really for everyone's sake also. The next one will be the 13 and 14, which is the ratification and deposition. So the treaty must be legally ratified or agreed to by any nation wishing to join. So they are really open for a lot of members who are willing to have a lot of investigation. So they are really open for everyone. So that includes the 14 articles of the treaty. So now let us look at here the conversation of the father and his son. And he is asking about how many nations are recently signed the Antarctic Treaty. So the father said as of 2019, so the total number of parties to the treaty is 54, which consists of 29 consultative parties and 25 non-consultative parties. See here there are 54 countries, and it was divided into two balloons, which is the light brown and the brown. So on the left side we can see here the consultative parties, which was composed of these nations, and the other side it was composed of non-consultative parties, which is the other side. So what's the difference of the consultative parties and non-consultative parties? So the consultative parties are the bona fide members of the Antarctic Treaty. So they have the rights to attend the meetings. They suggest anything that on how they promote, and they can reform the Antarctic Treaty. However, the consultative parties, they are still members, and they can also attend the meetings, but they don't participate in the decision making of the treaty. Okay, so now let us move on to the research stations in Antarctica. So as mentioned earlier, there are a lot of human activities which was conducted on Antarctica. So, but now let us move on to the research station. So there are currently 70 permanent research stations which were scattered across the continent, and 29 countries owns that. So these are the countries or the signatories of the Antarctic Treaty that they want to ensure the preservation and the well-being of the whole continent. So research stations in Antarctica is really important because they are the ones who conduct researches elsewhere, and also helps to understand global environmental issues like climate change, ozone depletion, and sea level rise. As we all know that Antarctica is important for us because it has a profound effect on Earth's climate and ocean systems. So next one will be the largest research station on Antarctica. So it is owned by the United States of America, and it is the McMurdo Station. So the station is the largest community on the whole continent, and it has the capacity of 1,258 residents. So as we can see here, the map of the research stations in Antarctica. So there are really a lot of countries owning or research stations in Antarctica, and they are really willing to conduct scientific investigations about things that are still undiscovered up to now. So most of it comes from USA, comes from Russia, Australia. So they are really unified each other to help on how we can conduct a more discoveries on this continent. So that ends my part here. So the next topic will be about the territorial claims of the Antarctica.
Good day, everyone. I am Sofia Nicole Civales from BSIS 1-1, and I am here to talk about territorial claims in Antarctica. Antarctica's climate is extremely cold and dry, making it difficult to inhabit and colonize. Along the coast in the winter, its temperature ranges from -30 degrees Celsius to -10 degrees Celsius, and hovers around 0 degrees Celsius during summer. In the early 1800s, the United Kingdom was the first to lay territorial claims in Antarctica. Antarctica was never colonized due to the harsh climate and conditions, so the land remained open and free from claim disputes. In the 1900s, the United Kingdom claimed land segments in Antarctica, followed by France, Norway, and the German Nazi Party. Then, by the 1950s, 7 nations claimed territorial sovereignty over areas of Antarctica. And these nations are Argentina, Australia, Chile, France, Norway, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. The claims of Argentina, Chile, and the United Kingdom overlap. And aside from the 7 nations, there are 8 other nations wherein the United States, the Soviet Union, Belgium, Germany, Poland, Sweden, Japan, and South Africa had engaged in exploration but never put specific claims. By the 1950s, 7 nations claimed territorial sovereignty over areas of Antarctica. These nations are Argentina, Australia, Chile, France, New Zealand, Norway, and the United Kingdom. Claims of Argentina, Chile, and United Kingdom overlap. And aside from these 7 nations, there are 8 other nations: the United States, the Soviet Union, Belgium, Germany, Poland, Sweden, Japan, and South Africa had engaged in explorations but didn't put specific claims. The United States didn't recognize the claims of other governments and reserved its right to assert claims, as well as the Soviet Union. By 1959, there are 12 countries that came together to create the 1959 Antarctica Treaty. These countries were Argentina, Australia, Belgium, Chile, France, Japan, New Zealand, Norway, the Union of South Africa, the Union of the Soviet Socialist Republics, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, and the United States. The treaty states that all parties agreed that Antarctica shall forever to be used exclusively for peaceful purposes. The dreaming stipulations surrounding Antarctica land use should have no military presence, no mining, and no nuclear explosions. Although there are no countries in Antarctica, there are several territories, and today, 7 countries have territories on Antarctica. And these countries are France, United Kingdom, New Zealand, Australia, Norway, Chile, and Argentina. Along with the United States and Soviet Union, Peru, Russia, and South Africa also reserved their right to claim the original Antarctic Treaty. Brazil currently has a zone of interest but not an actual claim. The Antarctic Treaty does support territorial claims made before 1961 by the 7 countries. Under the treaty, the size of these claims cannot be changed and new claims cannot be made. Most importantly, the treaty establishes that any treaty state has free access to the whole region. As such, research stations supported by a variety of treaty states have been constructed within each of these territorial claims. And today, there are 47 states that have signed Antarctic Treaty. So now, let's move on to the 7 sovereign states that had made 8 territorial claims to land in Antarctica before 1961. These claims have been recognized only by the countries making claims in the area. So first is the Chilean Antarctic Territory or Chilean Antarctica, which is the territory in Antarctica claimed by Chile. The territory claimed by Chile covers the South Shetland Islands, Antarctic Peninsula called O'Higgins Land in Chile, and adjacent islands, the Alexander Island, Charcot Island, and the part of Ellsworth Land, among others. Chilean territorial claims on Antarctica are mainly based on historical, legal, and geographical considerations. The exercise of Chilean sovereignty over the Chilean Antarctic Territory is put into effect in all aspects that are not limited by the signing of the Antarctic Treaty at 1959. Next is Argentine Antarctica. It is a sector of Antarctica claimed by Argentina as part of its national territory, consisting of the Antarctic Peninsula and a triangular section extending to the South Pole. This region overlaps with British and Chilean claims in Antarctica. However, all claims are suspended by the Antarctic Treaty System, of which Argentina is a founding signatory and permanent consulting member, with the Antarctic Treaty Secretariat being based in Buenos Aires. The Argentine exploration of the continent started early in the 20th century. Jose Maria Sobral was the first Argentine to set foot in Antarctica in 1902, where he spent 2 seasons with the Swedish Antarctic expedition of Dr. Otto Nordenskjöld. Shortly afterwards, in 1904, the Orcadas permanent base was already full operational. The first Argentine expedition to reach the South Pole was the 1965 Operation 90. Next territory is the British Antarctic Territory, which is a sector of Antarctica claimed by the United Kingdom as one of its 14 British overseas territories and is the largest. So, next is the British Antarctic Territory, which is a sector of Antarctica claimed by the United Kingdom. It is as one of its 14 British overseas territories and is the largest territory that was claimed by this country. It comprises the region south of 60 degrees south latitude and between longitudes 20 degree west and 80 degree west, forming a wedge shape that extends to the South Pole, overlapping the Antarctic claims of Argentina and the Chile. This territory was formed on March 3, 1962, although the UK's claim to this portion of the Antarctic dates back to letters patent of 1908 and 1917. The area now covered by the territory includes 3 regions, which before 1962 was administered by the British as separate dependencies of the Falkland Islands. That includes Graham Land, the South Orkney Islands, and the South Shetland Islands. Since the Antarctic Treaty came into force in 1961, Article 4 of which states that the treaty does not recognize dispute nor establish territorial sovereignty claims, no new claims shall be asserted while the treaty is in force. Most countries do not recognize territorial claims in Antarctica. The United Kingdom has ratified the treaty. In 2012, the southern part of the territory was named Queen Elizabeth Land in honor of Queen Elizabeth II. Next is the territory that is claimed by New Zealand, which is the Ross Dependency. The dependency takes its name from Sir James Clark Ross, who discovered that Ross Sea and includes part of Victoria Land and most of the Ross Ice Shelf, Ross Island, Balleny Islands, and the small Scott Island also form part of the dependency, as does the ice-covered Roosevelt Island. The actual amount of landmass claimed is not large. Most of the area defined as being in the Ross Dependency is either in the Ross Sea or the Antarctic Ocean. It is the second smallest of the claims which made prior to the implementation of the Antarctic Treaty System and the suspension of all territorial claims to Antarctica proper. So now let's move on to the Adélie Land, or the territory claimed by France. Adélie Land stretches from a coastline area along the Great Southern Ocean inland all the way to the South Pole. Since January 12, 1956, there has been a manned French research base year-round. The Dumont d'Urville
station with a winter population of about 33, but which goes up to about 78 during the Antarctic summer. The first French station, for Fort Martin, was built April 9, 1950, but it was destroyed by a fire during the night of January 22 to 23, year 1952. Fort Martin housed a winter population of 11 in 1950 to 1951 and 17 in 1951 to 1952. Now let's move on to the Australian Antarctic Territory, which is a part of Antarctica that was claimed by the United Kingdom, and it is placed under the territory of the Commonwealth of Australia in 1933. It is the largest territory of Antarctica claimed by any nation. In 1961, the Antarctic Treaty came into force. So again, Article 4 deals with the territorial claims, and although it does not renounce or diminish any pre-existing claims to sovereignty, it also does not support the position of contracting parties in their recognition or non-recognition of territorial sovereignty or non-recognition of territorial sovereignty. As a result, only 4 other states recognized Australia's claim to sovereignty in Antarctica. So the last 7 nations is the Queen Maud Land, or the region of Antarctica claimed as a dependent territory by Norway. This territory lies between the British Antarctic Territory and the Australian Antarctic Territory to the east. The territory were not officially defined until 2015, when Norway formally annexed the area between it and the South Pole. Positioned in the East Antarctica, the territory comprises about 1/5 of the total area of Antarctica. The claim is named for the Norwegian Queen Maud of Wallis. Norwegian Hjalmar Riiser-Larsen was the first person known to have set foot in the territory in 1930. On 1940-1939, the territory was claimed by Norway from 1939 until 1945. Germany claimed New Swabia, which consisted of part of Queen Maud Land. On June 23, 1961, Queen Maud Land became part of the Antarctic Treaty System, making it a demilitarized zone. It is one of the 2 Antarctic claims made by Norway. The other being is an uninhabited volcanic island in the Bellingshausen Sea. Which is 450 kilometers from Antarctica. It is claimed as a dependency of Norway, and along with Queen Maud Land and Bouvet Island, comprises one of the 3 Norwegian dependent territories in the Antarctic and Subantarctic. The island was first sighted by Fabian Gottlieb von Bellingshausen on January 21, 1821, and was named for Peter I of Russia. Not until February 2, 1929, did anyone set foot on the island, when Niels Larsen and Ola Olstad second Norwegian expedition, financed by Lars Christensen, was successful. They claimed it for Norway, who annexed in 1931 and made it a dependency in 1933. The next landing occurred in the 1948, and the island has been subject to some scientific research and a limited amount of tourism. The island became a subject to the Antarctic Treaty in 1961. The territory claimed by Germany, that is part of the Queen Maud Land, which is the New Swabia, It's one of the territorial claims that are not officially recognized. So, New Swabia is a cartographic name sometimes given to an area of Antarctica between 20 degree east and 10 degree west in Queen Maud Land, which is administered as a Norwegian dependent territory under the Antarctic Treaty System. New Swabia was explored by Germany in early 1939 and named after that expedition's ship, the Schwabenland, itself named after the German region of the Swabia. Like many other countries, Germany sent expeditions to the Antarctic region in the late 19th and the early 20th century, most of which were scientific. The late 19th century expeditions to the Southern Ocean, South Georgia, the Kerguelen Islands, and the Crozet Islands were astronomical and hydrological, mostly in close collaboration with scientific teams. The first German expedition to Antarctica was the Gauss expedition from 1901 to 1903, led by Arctic veteran and geology professor Erich von Drygalski. This was the first expedition to use a hot air balloon in Antarctica. It is also found and named Kaiser Wilhelm II Land. The second German Antarctic expedition, that is from year 1911 to 1912, was led by Wilhelm Pilchner with a goal of crossing Antarctica to learn if it is one piece of land. As happened with other such early attempts, the crossing failed before it was even begun. The expedition discovered and named the Luitpold Coast and the Pilchner Ice Shelf. A German whaling fleet was put to sea in 1937, and upon its successful return in early 1938, plans for a third German Antarctic expedition were drawn up. So next is the Brazilian Antarctica, which is also one of the territorial claims that are not officially recognized. So Brazilian Antarctica is the name of the Antarctica territory that is claimed by Brazil, proposed as zone of interest by geopolitical scholar Teresina de Castro, while the substance of that designation has never been precisely defined. It does not formally contradict the Argentine and British claims geographically overlapping with that zone. The country formally expressed reservations with respect to its territorial rights in Antarctica when it acceded to the Antarctic Treaty on May 16, 1975, making the first official mention of the frontage theory, which states that sovereignty over each point in Antarctica properly belongs to the first country whose non-Antarctic territory one would reach when traveling north in a straight line from such a point. The last land in Antarctica is the Marie Byrd Land, or the unclaimed land. The Marie Byrd Land is the portion of West Antarctica lying east of the Ross Ice Shelf and the Ross Sea, and south of the Pacific Ocean, extending eastward and approximately to a line between the head of the Ross Ice Shelf and the Eighth Coast. The inclusion of the area between the Rockefeller Plateau and Eighth Coast is based upon the leading role of Rear Admiral Richard E. Byrd in the exploration of this area. The name was originally applied by Admiral Byrd in 1929 in honor of his wife. In 1939, United States President Franklin Roosevelt instructed members of the United States Antarctic Service Expedition to take steps to claim some of Antarctica as United States territory. Although this appears to have been done by members of these and subsequent expeditions, these do not appear to have been formalized prior to the 1959 when the Antarctic Treaty System was set up. Some publications in the United States have shown this as a United States territory in the intervening period, and the United States Defense Department has stated that United States has a solid basis for a claim in Antarctica, resulting from its activities prior to 1969. The portion west of 150° west part of Ross Dependency of New Zealand. Within this claim, the UK, France, Australia, New Zealand, and Norway all recognize each other's claims, for none of these official claims overlap.